Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Picture this, we're in ancient Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. This incredibly fertile land stretching right between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers was where some of the absolute oldest civilizations in the world first flourished. And it's here that we're going to explore how a completely mysterious, dark liquid oozing out of the earth eventually grew to dominate the entire modern world. It's a wildly fascinating journey that shows how a totally misunderstood natural substance literally built the society we live in today.
We've got a lot of incredible ground to cover today. Here is our roadmap. First, a mysterious black liquid. 2, oil in the ancient world. 3, the dinosaur myth debunked. 4, how oil actually formed. 5, the birth of an industry. And finally, 6, powering the modern world. We're going to travel all the way from a 400-million-year-old geological past, right through ancient empires, all the way to the massive global oil crises of the 1970s.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, a mysterious black liquid and its discovery in Mesopotamia.
So people in this region started noticing a really weird natural phenomenon. In totally random places, this dark, thick, viscous liquid was just spontaneously oozing out of cracks in the ground. And you have to wonder, what exactly was this stuff? It had a super strong odor, it was completely pitch black, and it behaved totally differently than water. Absolutely nobody had a clue what it was. But, humanity's greatest superpower has always been curiosity. People started experimenting with it and quickly discovered a game-changing property. Water just would not penetrate it wherever it was applied.
Moving right along to Section 2, oil in the ancient world and how it solved ancient problems.
What's honestly amazing is how completely different empires interacted with this exact same substance, totally independently of one another. Take the Sumerians. They figured out they could use this natural bitumen to waterproof their wooden boats. Suddenly, boats lasted way longer, river trade boomed, and they even started packing it between bricks to strengthen buildings in ancient Babylon. Over in Egypt, they were focused on the afterlife. Their mummification process used this exact same stuff to preserve bodies. Fun fact, the Arabic word mamia is actually where we get the English word mummy. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away in China, they were drilling hollow bamboo pipes deep into the ground to bring up natural gas and this black liquid for light and heat. The Persians, they weaponized it, using it for flaming arrows in warfare. And the Greeks were actually using it as a medicine for joint and skin problems, relying on ancient trial and error centuries before modern science confirmed its antibacterial properties.
Let's get into Section 3, the dinosaur myth debunked, revealing the true source. Now, for thousands of years, nobody in any of those massive civilizations actually knew where this substance came from. And frankly, even today, there is this massive misconception out there that oil is made from the crushed remains of giant dinosaurs. I hear it all the time. But actually, scratch that, the truth is completely different. The story doesn't begin with a T-Rex. It begins 300 to 400 million years ago. The Earth looked totally different. Where we have land today, there were once vast oceans teeming with billions of microscopic organisms. Think tiny algae and plankton, so small you couldn't even see them with the naked eye. That right there is the true source of oil.
Which brings us to Section 4, how oil actually formed, millions of years in the making.
The actual science behind this transformation is mind-blowing. It's basically a giant geological pressure cooker. When all those microscopic marine organisms died, they sank down to the very bottom of the ocean. Year after year, century after century, new layers of mud and sand just piled up on top of them. We're talking millions, if not billions of years of being buried deeper and deeper. As they sink, the extreme heat and crushing pressure deep within the earth literally cook these organic remains into a waxy substance called kerogen. Finally, if the temperature sits in the perfect Goldilocks zone between 60 and 120 degrees Celsius, that kerogen transforms into crude oil. If it gets hotter than that, it just turns into natural gas.
Now, because oil is lighter than water, it doesn't just sit still once it forms, it actually wants to float up. So it seeps upward through tiny cracks in the rocks. It just keeps migrating until it eventually hits a dense layer of hard, impenetrable rock. And right there, it gets trapped, pulling together to form these massive, hidden underground reservoirs. This totally explains why oil isn't always found exactly where it formed and why it took humanity millennia to figure out how to actively dig down and extract it.
Let's look at Section 5, the birth of an industry, going from a surface seep to an actual well.
Fast forward with me to the mid-19th century. The Industrial Revolution is absolutely booming. Cities are growing at a frantic pace, and the world desperately needs a reliable way to light up the night. Up until this point, believe it or not, the main source of light was whale oil. But we were massively overhunting whales, so the oil became incredibly scarce and insanely expensive. The world desperately needed a backup plan. Enter a Canadian geologist named Abraham Gessner. In 1846, he invents kerosene, a clean, relatively safe fuel distilled right from crude oil. This single invention instantly created a massive, explosive demand for raw crude oil. The only problem was, people just needed to figure out how to get it out of the ground reliably.
Well, in 1859, a retired railway worker named Edwin Drake did something totally revolutionary over in Titusville, Pennsylvania. Instead of just waiting for the oil to seep up to the surface naturally, he decided to drill for it. He went down 69 feet, successfully struck oil, and created the world's very first commercial oil well. The industry exploded literally overnight. But, it was John D. Rockefeller who realized the real genius move. The big money wasn't in the risky, chaotic business of drilling, it was in refining and transporting the stuff. By 1863, he backed his first refinery, and by 1870, he officially launched Standard Oil.
And that brings us to a frankly staggering number, 90%. By ruthlessly making special, highly discounted transport deals with railways and just systematically buying out his competitors, Rockefeller's Standard Oil grew to control 90% of all refined oil in America in just one single decade. This absolute monopoly made his net worth the equivalent of $400 billion in today's money. There's almost no way to comprehend that kind of wealth. Even when the government finally forced his company to break up in 1911 to restore some market competition, Rockefeller kept shares in all the new spin-off companies, which actually ended up making him even richer.
All right, final stretch. Section 6, Powering the Modern World, the engine of the 20th century.
So, while Rockefeller built his absolute empire on providing oil for lighting, a completely new invention was waiting in the wings to rewrite history: the internal combustion engine. In 1886, Carl Benz created the very first successful petrol-powered car. But the real paradigm shift happened in 1908 when Henry Ford rolled out the affordable Model T. Suddenly, oil wasn't just something you put in a lamp, it was the beating heart of the entire global transportation economy. This kicked off a frantic worldwide scramble for fuel, eventually leading to a monumental discovery in 1938 at Dam M Well No. 7 in Saudi Arabia. It proved that the largest oil reserves on planet Earth were hiding right there under the Middle Eastern sands.
Now, for a long time, foreign companies were the ones extracting all this incredible wealth. But the producing nations soon realized that the modern world literally could not function without their resources, so they decided to push back. In 1960, countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Venezuela banded together to form OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. Their goal? To completely reclaim control over their own oil production and pricing from those foreign entities.
And the raw, unmatched power of this resource became undeniably clear a bit later, during the 1973 oil crisis. When a war erupted in the Middle East and Western nations backed Israel, several Arab oil-producing nations retaliated by just cutting the global supply. The impact was immediate, and it was devastating. Oil prices skyrocketed almost overnight. We're talking miles-long lines at petrol pumps all over the globe, struggling factories, and soaring inflation. It was a massive, collective wake-up call, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that just cutting the supply of this one single liquid could completely paralyze the global economy.
Which leaves us with this final, striking question to consider today. When an entire civilization relies on one single resource, is it their greatest strength or their biggest weakness? Oil gave humanity light, unprecedented speed, and massive industry. It is quite literally the fuel that built the modern world. But it's deeply fascinating, maybe even a bit unsettling, to think about a substance that took the Earth hundreds of millions of years to create, yet took us barely a century to become completely and utterly dependent upon. Just something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep staying curious.